Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Applied Anthroposophy. I'm Tess Parker. You found us in the right place, Wednesday evenings, Seed Series. We're here tonight with Jaimen McMillan and Jennifer and Horst Kornberger, and we'll be introducing them in just a moment. I'm really excited to have them here with us. And then at the end of our hour together, we'll have a presentation from Hazel Archer Ginsburg on the different background, history, and indications of the equinox, the spring equinox, which is coming up. So she's a master of telling us tales about the story of the year. So I hope you stick around for that. So let us open, if you have a candle, and just settle yourselves in for our program.
May wisdom shine through me. May love glow in me. May strength penetrate me, that in me may arise a helper of mankind, a servant of holy things, selfless and true.
So we begin our evening tonight with such a special guest. I'm so grateful that we get to host Jaimen McMillan. He is the founder of the Spatial Dynamics Institute. I put the link just now in the chat if you want to read more about that amazing institution. Jaimen has dedicated his life to studying the effects and possibilities of human movement. He has been working in the field of movement with education and therapy and coaching and world peace for over 50 years. So we are so grateful that you're here. And I'll just add a personal note that I know 3 people. I was thinking about it today, and I could name 3 people who have been students of yours, Jaimen, who tell us that the work that they have done with you has been utterly transformative to their lives. So we're really excited to hear what you're going to bring for us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your kind words. Welcome. Oh, I see Peter and Julie. And friends around the world. Lovely to be together. I want to thank the organizers for inviting me. And I have 25 minutes, so I'm getting going. So I want also to move together. The question of our time is, how can we connect? How can we connect in a healthy way? And one of the problems that we have is we've been lied to. People say, you are 72 years old, you're 5'8", you weigh 150 pounds, you are male, and this is where you start and this is where you finish. And in order to connect, what we really need are spaces, not just space, but differentiated space. And we're going to work briefly with those spaces, but why? In order to, we heard, to serve mankind, or let's say human kind, and in order to be kind to humans, Rudolf Steiner's work, and that's what we're celebrating and working with in these sessions, one needs to connect from person to person. And the best definition that I've ever heard of anthroposophy was becoming human. So let's start by actually touching our own bodies and acknowledging this as a space. So we don't want to just think body. We want to say this is indeed my body. This is, if you will, my home. And a wonderful beginning to exploring space is to explore one's own body thoroughly, to accept, celebrate, live into, and we heard in the verse, also through. Number one, first space, the body space. The next space, and we've heard about this space quite a bit in the past 2.5 years, personal space. 50 years when I first started with spatial dynamics, when we talk about personal space, a lot of people didn't understand it. And then the first ones who did understand it were the Americans, and they say, get out of my space. Well, there's a little bit of an understanding of personal space there, but perhaps it's not meant to be a wall. Let's bring it out here first. And you can actually push against it because there are some things that you don't want in your space and you don't want in your body. So you can say, no, thank you. I say no to that. Now, the thing that's beautiful about this is you can turn this personal space around and this space can become a sense organ. And I love that term in biology, a semi-permeable membrane. So if something's beautiful and wonderful and true, you can let it into your space. You can, if something's really true, you can bring it into your body. And the most important thing is we can learn to select what comes in and what comes out. The next one, and that's what we're doing here, even through Zoom, the interpersonal space. So we've already jumped beyond the purely physical or even observable space. This you can feel and you touch, you can see. This you can imagine pretty clearly. The interpersonal space should be different for each and every engagement that we have. When you see an old friend, you almost jump, not only out of your skin, but out of your personal space, and there you are. So this is not a defined space as the body is, or even the personal space. It should be fluid. It should change. A good teacher sometimes will address a student, and if you will, it sounds a little bit hard, but sometimes it's necessary, as someone who's been teaching for 50 years, put them in their place. And they should be able to let that go immediately, and the classroom, again, can become big. So the interpersonal space might be localized, and a good teacher would embrace the entire class. A good presenter would begin on the outer reaches of a room, and that would be an interpersonal space. So that was space number 3. Space number 4 is where anthroposophy really can help us, and that is an inversion of space. Now, the body space started, of course, with where your personal body is, physical body. And the personal space expanded, and the other one flows back and forth. The social space is not necessarily far away. What it is, it's an inversion of space as we know it. So in other words, with the inversion of space, one has the possibility of beginning with the other person, of beginning with a social situation. So I'm looking at some of your faces and say, an inversion of space. Could you help me there? Okay, so let me go to the 5 spaces and then I'll build a couple of bridges to that. And the 5th space that we use in spatial dynamics is you invert the space and so that you're outside, and you open so that which is outside can stream in to you through the social space, the interpersonal space, the personal space, and the body. That would be being outside and inside at the same time. Before you all came on board, the presenters and the organizing groups, we met with each other and we talked about a few of our teachers. And what we really admired, without naming it, is these individuals were able to be present exactly where they were and in different languages and different images to reach the people. And the master that I've heard about is from some people who actually saw Steiner lecture. They saw him go to the lectern. They wondered, is he going to make it there? He looked so exhausted. And as he started speaking, he got younger and younger. Physically, there he was, speaking to them, 100% present in that room, and he could go into the spiritual world, bring the messages that he got there. Perhaps it was even backwards. Turn it around and present it to the people. That's a master of space, number 5. To be outside and inside at the same time. Now, don't worry, you don't have to become Rudolf Steiner. Each and every one of you, however, has had movements and experiences like this, but we just didn't name it. A moment when you heard the Hallelujah chorus, and you heard that around you and you felt it inside of you, and you said, I am. Or you've been in nature, and it's so beautiful outside, and you recognize the beauty that's outside is actually inside your body. Outside and inside at the same time. Okay, so how do you practice this in simple terms? And the easy way is you do an experiment, and we're going to change one variable, and that is your mind. Just something simple, just change your mind. And you put your mind on your body, and you say, this is what I am minding. This is where my attention is going. And I look at my arm, and even though I've seen my arms countless times, I really look to say, is there something new that I can notice? The ridges in the fingernails, or a few more wrinkles in the hands, or a little shine to my wedding ring. Looking at it and saying, that's where I'm putting my attention. And let's call that A, the letter A. I just realized, well, some of you aren't doing it. Wait a minute. This is not an intellectual exercise. This is, you have to actually do it. Good. So I'm going back because I put my attention so much on my arm that I was disarmingly unattentive. Let's try that again. So really, it's, and not too long, but just look at it with the interest of a child. And if you have trouble thinking about it and you think something else, actually touch it. What does your arm feel like? So we're going to call that A. Now you release. Okay. Now, step number 2, A, the body, points. Now it's the same height as the arm was before, so we're only changing one variable. Same arm, but now I'm pointing. And if I turn a little bit, you can actually see a little bit more. I say, could I have one of those, please? Would you help me? And when you see an arm that's like this, the arm disappears. That's right. So most of you are trying. Actually, if you take the same arm and point, you shouldn't feel that arm at all. And look and point in different directions. And what happens is what you're pointing at comes into focus. That's the second dynamic, A to B. And we're trying to build up to inversion. That's why we need this. That's dynamic number 2. Number 3, B, that which is around you, flows out like water and carries your arm. And the element of dynamic and rhythm comes in that, because this goes out like water, your arm rides on it, and it's over. There wasn't any rhythm in A. There wasn't any rhythm in A to B, dynamic number 2, but now, and you release. And release. Dynamic number 3. Now we're trying to build the bridge for the social space, the inversion. Start like a master or like a small child and put your attention outside and enter into a state of wonder or awe and let something that's outside of you, outside of your body, draw your hand. And you can turn around the room and see, in this case, my wife is behind the camera, so it's really quite easy for me. I'm almost cheating. So I can put my attention at Dorothea and let my attention by Dorothea draw my hand. That's a totally different experience for me and a totally different experiences for her than if I were to point A to B. And she's behind the camera nodding. So in other words, a human being doesn't have to be encapsulated inside a body, nor inside a personal space, not even bordered by interpersonal space. This is the inversion. You can start outside your body with your higher self. Rudolf Steiner calls it in German das Ich, or we call it I use the Latin ego. The higher part, or the captain of the ship, puts his or her attention outside on the river and steers the ship. If this person's steering the ship like this, we're going to be in trouble. Remember when you first started driving the car and you're looking at the roof of the car and your parents were trying to say, look at the road, you know. Okay. What it is the same. Take your higher self, put it out there on the road and direct your movements from where you are outside. We do it all the time whenever we do anything well. But the question is, do we take the time to realize that's where the higher self is? Outside the body in a movement that's done well. So that's dynamic number 4, to be drawn from the outside. And the last stage is really, really important. And that's put in there when people say, thank you. And the other person says, you're welcome. That's being drawn by the outside, like a magnet. And now here comes stage number 5, receiving. Thank you. You're welcome. That's a dynamic that allows you to be outside and inside your body at the same time. That's what we call in spatial dynamics, the supra-personal. If people practice this, what happens? They become social. Why? Well, at least they have the option, but they actually do. Normally they will. So many people who have trouble being social are spatially caught in one of those spaces. Caught in their body. If I was, I'm not going to make you nervous, but if I was saying, good evening, I'm really happy to be a contributor to the course, I'm caught in my body. And then this is a personal space, could even be like, oh yeah. People who always take things personally, they're caught in that. Even the interpersonal, there are people who are caught in the interpersonal space and they only know who they are when they're interacting. And when they're alone, they don't even know who they are, they collapse. There are people who are living in the periphery, in the inverted space, in that space which draws you. I've worked with children and adults with developmental challenges, and I met a lot of them, worked with a lot of them, who lived largely in the suprapersonal space, but not consciously. Worked with people who have took too many drugs. They had peripheral experiences that are amazing to hear, but we say nobody's home. That's living in the suprapersonal space, but not in the interpersonal, not in the personal, or not in the body space. And the 5 is a gift. You really can't make that happen. You can be drawn by an ideal, and if you open yourself the ideal may find you worthy and flow back. In a conversation, you can truly be interested in the other person or start with the other person. Listen to them. And in listening, all of a sudden, there's a gift. And you realize something. And you might keep it quiet, or you might share it. But it didn't come from your body. It didn't come from your personal space. It didn't even come from the personal space, interpersonal space. It started by beginning with the other person. Listening, giving them your attention, giving them, if you will, really a loving attention. Good. So I'm going to do a few movements so you can say, well, what could that look like? I don't want to just stand there and look at my arm and just, I'm going to repeat and sneak it in as a teacher. Watch. A, I don't want to just have my attention on my arm. I don't only want to go A to B and point. It's fun to go out there and follow that. I get that. I love being drawn out there from the periphery. And could I be drawn and receive? Now let's do a movement or two if you can. You can join me. If not, then you can live in the experience. So I'm going to say what the body does. That's your body space, space number one. Your body has your hands here in front of what we call in spatial dynamics, the sun sphere. So it is a sphere that embraces the bottom part of the heart, the lungs, and the diaphragm. A sun sphere, a spiral that comes around here, a spiral that comes from underneath, and it's held here in front of the heart and the solar plexus. We're going to spiral out and up with one arm, spiral down and out with the other, and at the same time, spiraling into a diagonal. That's dynamic number one, what the body is doing. Your attention is on your body. That's space number one. You don't have to walk at the same time, but it's also a walking exercise. Good. That's number one. Number two, let's say you're going to point. And now I'm not thinking about my body. I'm thinking about pointing, drawing the space outside. That's space number two, A to B. Just for fun, let's do it with our fingertips. And your attention goes out and say, that's where you're pointing. That's where you're pointing. Now your gaze goes forward at the same time, but your attention is on A, your body, to B. Now you come back in and your attention is A to B, a point. Now come out, spiral out. So you're living in the traces you are creating in space. Now we'll have our hands back like this in this position here, but we're still giving the major attention to the trace in space. So you have your body, space number one, and space number one expands from A to B. The next dynamic, and you're already starting to do it because you say, I get this. Now you send emotion. This is the third dynamic. Emotion goes out and the arm follows. There goes the motion. B precedes A and A floats as if it had almost no weight. B precedes, A goes out. The same motion, just put your mind into the dynamic. Beautiful. There we go. And it's like the motion of the ocean. You could almost hear it. Beautiful. Now, number four, dynamic number four. If a bird was flying by, or butterfly, you might be saying, the butterfly. Now you can't point at a butterfly because you don't know where the butterfly is going to go, do you? You can't really point at a bird that's flying. You have to be drawn by the butterfly. You have to begin at the butterfly. In other words, B, the butterfly, or B, the bird, draws you, and A, your body follows. But put your mind, just try just one arm, as if something is moving, and like a little child, be drawn to that. And from here, and now both of them at the same time, the form that you created draws you out like a vacuum. You begin outside the body. Dynamic number 4. The rhythm recedes a little bit. It's a bit more meditative. It's called the pulsar. It's a form that's in the universe and the stars, and billions of stars form a pulsar, and they all know how to do it, forming themselves impeccably in this form. And number 5, be drawn by the outside, and then open yourself and see if what's outside a little bit can flow in. That's B draws A, and A receives B. 2 more times as we slowly close our session. Feel your body. We're going to add the 5 spaces too. Your body space. Feel your muscles stretch. And then personal space. Take that personal space as you're doing the exercise and say, I'm doing the exercise and I have a full personal space. The third one, you're there, I'm here, let's do it together. Interpersonal space. And that which unites us, the study of anthroposophy, take that as your goal, that B will draw your body. And our attempts to understand truth and become more human is what's leading our movements outside the body. And the very end, number 5, the suprapersonal, be drawn by the ideal, which is number 4. Open yourself and receive what may stream in. Thank you, and you're welcome. Lovely. So, dear friends, that's the amount of time that was given. It was wonderful. I actually recognized some of the people from some of the other workshops and some friends as well. So the gratitude, I begin with you for the gratitude, and I receive it and leave enriched by our short time together. Thank you, Jordan and Tess, for the invitation. Angela, for the lovely introduction, and all the best for your further work tonight.
Thank you so much, Jaimen.
You're welcome.
That can only be described as a taste, but what a nutritious taste that was. It really was. There's so many seeds in there that you brought in this mathematical equation that's as close as my everyday experience. So thank you. I think that certainly brought me into the realm of an investigator, and you clearly exhibit someone who has lived a life as this researcher who is, as you spoke there about other master teachers, that is somehow so present and so yourself, but yet giving so much and receiving so much joy, it appears in providing this such rich content to all of us. And so it is a challenge that we have here, knowing that you very well not only deserve an hour, but clearly years of study with you, which you offer, and your website, which we have here in the chat and also on the Padlet, will guide everyone to more information about spatial dynamics and all of the mini trainings that are happening. Now, Jaimen has trained a whole cohort underneath him that are also leading training. So it's really an initiative that is alive and well in the world. And we are so grateful for that.
Lovely.
And it's only something as wide and deep as anthroposophy that could provide the context for us to move from a movement art that was explicitly about finding and cultivating, becoming more aware of the space for social connections. So to move from a movement artist to a poet and a conceptual artist who've been working out of anthroposophy for a long time now. The Kornbergers, Horst and Jennifer, are joining us at the past the midnight hour in southern Austria. And they have been on a journey these last few months from Australia to Austria through Croatia. So that's a whole story we won't get into in our short time here. But there's just a lot of movement here. And to become aware, as Jaimen helped us, in the literal space and movement around us, can sensitize us to this enormous inner and outer movement taking place in so many human lives all around us right now. And so we asked the Kornbergers to come and share again, only the tip of a whole iceberg about the work that they are doing with groups of individuals, really to cultivate this sensitivity towards the social. And the Padlet, I'd encourage everyone to go there. There are many links, and especially for the Kornbergers' work, there's books, there's poetry, and there's much more on some of these social projects that they've been doing for us to look into further. So I'm very pleased to be able to welcome you here into our Applied Anthroposophy course.
Thank you, Jordan, and greetings to everybody. I'd just like to speak a short poem that belongs to one of our artworks. Shed the time it took you to arrive. Shed the time before and after, the time you lost or found, saved or wasted. Shed the time you think you still have. I think where we'd like to begin tonight in this sort of gallery of events that we want to lead you through with the theme, the context of applied anthroposophy, we want to bring to you some of the work that we've done, which is a certain slice of our work in the world. And we've chosen the stream of work that moves from the anthroposophical impulse into the mainstream world, how we've tried to open a space, become a bridge in that space for anthroposophy to flow into the world. And for me, this journey's been one of an intense collaboration with Horst. And that's really part of the story, is this creating this situation where we can both stream our individual missions in the world together. So beginning with collaboration, the meaning of collaboration, and how what lives between two people and all of the trials and triumphs of that can actually fuel one's mission. For me, my work begins really in this social sphere with the idea of festival. Completely immersed in what the meaning of festival means, the meaning of festival in terms of how can we draw people together into a social space where something bigger happens, reviving, if you like, the ancient Greek festival impulse in the modern context. And this work began actually within the Waldorf community, those wonderful volatile spaces where highly individualistic people come together, enormous creativity in the parent population, in the teacher population, very open children, and how to come into this situation as an artist and work with the community so that the gifts of all are operating so that something bigger happens, something that's healing and something that transforms that community, brings it to the next level. And Waldorf schools often, as you know, go through quite dire times. They have a lot of crises. It seems to be the normal rhythm of schools to go through times of deep crisis. And we were in a situation where the community that we were working with had gone through almost a shutdown of the school, through a deep crisis. And we're fortunate enough to be in a situation where we could bring healing through the festival impulse. And for me, this festival impulse needed to be something that arose completely free of any content that was there before, including any religious content. So what I wanted to do was to create a space within the school where completely new stories, new songs, new content could arrive. And this is what happened over 4 years. The Winter Festival was taken. Now, winter in Australia is in June, July. So it's this completely free space where something entirely new can happen. And in this time, new stories were brought to the community, new songs were made. And the whole space of the school, the whole landscape, the grounds of the school were inhabited on this midwinter night with stories that unfolded through the landscape. And these events became pivotal not only for the community, but for the wider community. We were getting hundreds of people coming from the outside to partake in these events, these winter festivals that were created. So this was the very beginning of this festival work, which then started to move out. How could that festival impulse live in different situations contextually? And then we came to the point where we were invited to create a festival for the Anthroposophical Society in Australia. And I'd like to bring up here the image of the honey clock, because that is one of our leading images for what we're working with in terms of trying to bring new images, completely new content to our work. So I'll invite you now, Horst, to speak about this honey clock and how it influenced our journey and our work from that point.
So our work is often, it's like a swing. Jennifer starts something and then I do something on the other side and then it pendles back. So when Jennifer did her festivals for the school, and I was of course involved in it too, I was working with honey, very inspired by Joseph Beuys. And at one point I was invited to an exhibit on time, and we had to create artworks around time. And I imagined this honey clock, and it was eventually made. There were a number of them. And it was really a timepiece that measures quality time, not quantity time. You can see the honey drip slowly and this beautiful bubble is slowly rising. So it became an image or a symbol, if you like, of time that moves slowly and moves rhythmically. And as I did that, Jennifer got inspired by the idea of honey, the idea of the bee crisis that was just coming up in the consciousness of the world, and then created the content for what was called the Bee Master. And I think she will talk about that particular festival a little bit more.
So this incredible object, which offered a completely different experience of time, when people experienced this honey clock, it was sweet time. It was kairos time, if you like, if that is a word for you, where time culminates in a richness where people can come together and experience the spirit of time, the actual beingness of time. And the Bee Master Festival was an experience for people where the whole of the Anthroposophical Society met and encountered over 4 nights of festival drama where sort of bigger world themes, the scientist, the poet, archetypes of humanity were coming together to try to work out what was going to happen. Here you have the scientist and a figure representing the Aramanic there in the center. Rife Cord was the name of this particular character. So working with anthroposophical themes and finding completely new situations, to new dramas to bring out this the whole situation of humanity.
Just a word to this scene. So this was this scientist in blue who was right on the edge of a breakthrough. And on the stage were his various thoughts. It was beautiful. The thoughts were people, and they were sort of vying for attention. And of course, he couldn't quite break through because there was this character who held him back. So what Jennifer tried to do is to really enliven and bring things that happen inside, usually a person's mind, outside. So we worked with this for quite a long time until we presented this. I'll give you another shot from this Bee Master Festival. But the important thing was to create a content that would speak to a whole society at that point in time of what was going on. So our aim often is to really capture what already lives in the minds and bring metaphors, bring artwork, bring performances that articulate that and thus transform it. So here's another picture. I'll just move on a little bit. And out of this, I'll put that on, situation came another. Do you want to first talk about Oraculum, Jennifer?
Just bring that one back. Just bring that one back.
You talk about it.
The next artwork that we'd like to share with you actually comes out of a foundation studies called the Time Map. So the theme of time and how we're working with time is really central to this whole journey. Oraculum was a process where a whole group of people, around 40 people, went through a poetic process where we explored a ritual to renew time. And as part of this ritual to renew time, people had to find new ways of speaking about time, to create one original poem where time was given a new lease of life through language, through the human being, bringing a new imagination of time towards it. And then we created an event where people, the audience, would come through into a hall space and encounter this poetry. And the poetry was spoken face to face, very, very intimately, so that in this experience for the audience member, they were met directly by another human being who stood by their words, who stood in their words, and was able to elicit a completely new experience for that person. Totally original work. And that's what we're going to do tonight. We've got a couple of minutes after you've watched this very short video, which Horst will now put on, of this oraculum experience of creating a ritual to renew time. We will write one line for time.
Time will make parallel blooms, make diagrams of yellow, green, mustard grass. They tell us to save time, hang it on walls, siphon it from screens. But I tell you to bury it near the fruit tree and wait.
We will go through the snow of time. We will hear the rooster crow. In that same moment, the sunset will arrive.
On the longest day, when the oceans are warmest, we will prepare time for its passage. You will cut its unkempt hair.
That's just a very short snippet of this particular experience of the ritual of renewing time. And I'd like to invite you all now to take up your pen and paper and create one line which begins with the word time. And then I'm going to ask you to choose a verb, a surprising verb, and see what comes. For example, time shouted at me from the next room. Time gargled and spat. Time tied its shoelaces. Time made a sketch and folded it into a paper airplane. Take the word time and find a surprising verb and create a sentence out of that. We just give about 30 seconds for you to do that. And then I'd love you to start sharing those on chat so you can type it in. The most important thing in this exercise is that in the creative act, we go into the unknown and we embrace the surprise, that we don't lean on anything from the past, that we invite the future which wants to express itself through us by our willingness to surprise ourselves. We've got some wonderful lines starting to accrue there in the chat. So while you're doing that, I'd like to ask Horst now to just dip into a special project called the Delphi Project.
One of our major missions is really closely tied up with the poetic. We believe that being able to create authentic metaphors, to write a poem, to appreciate poetry, but particularly to create it oneself, is a major path of transformation itself. Since we're an anthroposophical audience, I might say the spirit self is necessarily poetic. The closer we come to our innermost self, the more poetic we become almost by default. And we have worked a lot with poetry, mostly in the mainstream, but we also engage, of course, anthroposophical audiences in it. And after we had done Oraculum, we wanted to do an experiment in collective imagination. In Oraculum, individuals were enabled to write an authentic poem that could really stand in the world. In Delphi, we thought, is it possible for communities to write poetry together? And we had this unique chance to rent the Athens School of Fine Art, which is really adjacent to the Delphi Sanctuary in Greece. We gathered a group of individuals together. We trained them up in an online course and then met for a week in Delphi itself, in the School of Fine Arts. And there we wrote poetry together with the aim, is it possible if we dip into our poetic selves, but not just as an individual, but as a group, that poetry, or even a kind of poetic knowing that exceeds our ordinary knowing, comes between us? Is it possible to create, and is the collective imagination, that was really the basic question, is the collective imagination a kind of new oracle, a contemporary oracle? Can we, by practicing poetry, know things that we ordinarily don't know? And so we did this whole project, and eventually there's a book came out of that, the Delphi project also. And when we returned from Delphi, very soon another project came our way. We were invited to create a ritual for a major public descent project, the Row 8 project. It was a kind of almost a civil war in WA around a disappearing wetland. And there were protests for months. There was police, there was shoutings, there was extraordinary movement, people tying themselves to caterpillars, living on trees for months. But at one point it came to this halt. Everybody was exhausted, and people approached us to stage a protest that was very different. And so we worked with a silent protest for 1 hour. We arranged a fairly huge crowd. It was well over 1,000 people together, and stand entirely still for the duration of 1 hour. It was one of the most amazing experiences in my life, because it seemed like 1 minute. We thought people would fade in and out, but everyone stood there, and we all held a gaze, looked in a particular direction. Nobody spoke a word, and the whole hour passed in a flash. It was a quite extraordinary experience of what I call a poetic descent action. Jen, you might want to say something to that.
This was another experience of collective imagination, because while we were in silence for 1 hour in the major square in the city of Perth, we had worked with various leaders of different groups to make sure that people were imagining the future while they were standing silent for 1 hour. It was not an inactive silence, it was contemplation of the future that they wanted to see come about. And to hold that space with more than 1,000 people publicly was an incredible experience. The shout that came after the silence was one of the most triumphant shouts I think I've ever heard. In our journey into bringing anthroposophy, bringing the impulse of festival and the poetic impulse into the mainstream, we had the opportunity after these various works to be invited to activate a space for a festival event, a biennale art event in Fremantle. It was a beautiful space in the bottom of a warehouse with these wonderful pillars, and there were 22 of these pillars, which gave the name to the work, 22 Pillars, which also references 22 pillars of wisdom. We gathered 22 poets, emerging and established poets, and they each created a poem. I gave the matrix for the event. It was a ritual to renew time and place. They each had an archetype that lived in Fremantle: the green lighthouse, the morning swimmer, mother of three. There were various archetypes that they had to enliven and bring and speak into that space live.
I should maybe say they had to speak from the I. So they had to become the green lighthouse or the morning swimmer or the coffee drinker. Yeah, so they always had to come from the I and speak directly, as you can see it here, to people, really connect with the group. Very similar in a different way as what Jaimen actually was talking about.
And in this intimacy of the spoken word, where people were standing so firmly in their words, something deeply human was happening. And the idea of the audience actually moving through the performer's stationary and the audience mobile was a very interesting format for us to work with. The audience in our next work was also a floating mobile audience. We were invited again to work with the next Biennale 2 years later. And we created an international project. We went to Slovenia and lived there for almost a year and formed connections with Slovenian artists and managed to find grants for them to come to Perth to realize this piece called Somnus. Somnus means sleep. It's the Roman name, the god of sleep. And in the way that we were working with the theme of sleep, it became a metaphor for entering the spiritual world. So again, we see the anthroposophical impulse, this need to bring people to a threshold experience, to try to bring them to a threshold where the spiritual world could somehow become available in a public space, in a safe way, because the art could hold people. The sense of the community of artists, the Slovenian and Australian artists, the whole process that we worked with was a deeply spiritual practice in itself, working with Chekhov exercises, enabling something to come through in the performance that might not necessarily come about if one hadn't have tapped into those particular levels.
We're almost running out of time, so let's just perhaps make that the end. So just to describe the project a little bit, it had two parts. During the day, we created a sleep sanctuaries where sleepers like the one you see here, a group of sleepers slept in a museum space, and people could walk in and walk through while these sleepers slept. And in the evening, this polarity was reversed. The sleepers woke up, and Jennifer had written a whole drama sequence, actually 3 different dramas that were performed on 3 different stages, and people mingled with the content and they slipped, you might say, into the sleep experience of 3 different human beings and lived with them. And we'd like to show you a small excerpt which you can also later on go to our website and see the whole video clip of that performance, just to get to give you an idea of the mood and the atmosphere. Yeah.
And just to introduce that, the music that was created for this was created by a Slovenian composer, and all the music that you hear in this video clip is live in the space.
When the mind goes into sensory blackout, it lives in metaphors and images. It makes meaning out of distantly related concepts. Rather than being in a stupor, it's at times experiencing a higher order of harmony, which led me to propose in Somnus the existence of a night self, a wiser part of us that by day is wrapped under the spell of the senses, a night self that emerges as we fall asleep. It's as if every night when we cross the border into sleep, we shape a hidden biography, create another narrative. Perhaps the true story of our life is crafted in sleep. the true story being the one that keeps us most human. Somnus was an expedition across the threshold to sojourn with 4 sleepers as their night selves led them into various scenarios, both harrowing and healing. But first, we had to unbind the night selves.
I think we've come to the end of our time. So that was, a journey through the gallery of, I guess, almost 20 years of work, one particular slice of our work.
I think what I'd like to say just at the end is that the last kind of performances are all basically done with majorly mainstream audiences who come, and our aim is to really open a crack in the world, allow experiences to siphon in that would otherwise not occur in life, and to really shift something in the audience so that something opens up and a new perspective enters, at least a light is kindled that they may or may not follow on further. And I think our time is up, and I'd like to honor that and keep time. So thank you for
perhaps I can
listening.
just read a couple, Jordan. Is it possible to read a couple of those? Yeah. Oh, there's amazing lines that you've written. Time clutches her handkerchief. Time spoke to me in a language I didn't recognize. Time combed her hair and smiled. Time doubles over with laughter. Time reverberated through the halls, skipped through the pasture like a child, kissed me full on the lips. Time embraced us, all 3 of me. Time lays down to rest. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you. I feel like those lines almost speak for themselves and how your work was just received in our community. Thank you so much for bringing that. It truly is applied anthroposophy. I really am grateful that you are bringing your work in that way that you said, that kind of opens that door and just and can be accessible to all. And that's really, really important. And that's one way that art can impact us. It's a universal language. So thank you for working in all the different mediums that you do and bringing your work, and for being with us tonight. And now you can probably go and sleep because it's very late where you are. So I appreciate meeting the both of you and being here with you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tess. And thank you to Jordan also for the invitation to share. Thank you, everyone. And
thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Wow. So yeah, we'll take a little brief minute, and if you have to jump off, of course, you're welcome to, and we'll come back and hear from Hazel. So just a little bit, probably like 3 to 4 minutes. I'll put up a slide. Hello, we're back with our not so consistent 5 minutes. It's different every time, but thanks for bearing with us. And yeah, I'm happy that Hazel's joining us to talk about the Equinox. Some of you know her from the full program, and I'll put your blog, Hazel, in the chat, thereverseritual.com. It's a really wealth of amazing resources throughout the year. She does a fantastic job. So yeah, I'll just turn it over to you so you have enough time. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. And hello, everyone. Yes, it's so good to be back in these concentrated ethers with all of you as we, we're tending this spiritual garden that has, I really feel like it has really come alive through these speakers tonight. I'm just overjoyed that all of this creativity can happen in the world and we can be part of it. But I'm also feeling like I'm living in the caterpillar phase of our journey. I'm feeling a little awkward and like I want to just eat a lot, and I'm not sure what that's all about. Maybe it's because we've just entered this daylight savings time thing, and I hope your circadian rhythms are resettling nicely. But yeah, March is just so full of amazing holy days, and we don't have time to talk about all of them. But today actually is the Jewish festival of Purim. It begins tonight, and this is when we hear about the courage of Esther. It's one of my favorite stories. And tomorrow is St. Patty's Day. They have already dyed the Chicago River green, so we're on our way. It's a tradition here. And Friday, it's the full Lenten moon. And then on Sunday, March 20th, comes the vernal equinox. You know, and that brings this glorious balance of day and night, with just about 12 hours of both dark and light. And I know you've been feeling the shift. The plant and animal kingdoms, they have been accommodating themselves. The birds are building their nests. Everybody's busy. We're feeling it, this calling to arise and be reborn. And this mystery, it's also working in the soul forces of the human being. And we know that during the winter, it was so great to hear Jennifer talk about that winter festival. I'm still seeing that honey clock. But we know that during the winter time, yeah, it's the time of stories, and it's our power of thinking is at its most concentrated. We have this individual human form that comes to its most focused place. And then in the springtime, there's a real turning point that happens. So that when the time that summer comes, a kind of perfect reversal is made. Sort of what Jaimen was talking about, that, you know, what was within our inner life turns outward, and what was outward turns inward. Right? Do you feel that? So that was really great to have him really give us that to really work with. And another powerful tool is, you know, that helps us achieve this flow has been given in the calendar of the soul through Rudolf Steiner. We work with this in our Thursday chrysalis group every time. And it really is a great way to live into the cosmic and earthly energies in which our soul traverses. And we know that before we begin the renewal of the cycle, which starts at verse number 1, this is the Easter verse, we must first meet the vernal equinox, which sets the rhythm for our movable feast, which is the first Sunday after the first full moon that occurs after the spring equinox. So we have this cosmic signature that happens. And then at this time of balance, we have Raphael, the archangel of the East, and the element of air. This becomes really activated, this great cosmic physician who shows us that Eastertide works on us through the spiritual healing of inspiration. So yeah, I really felt that come alive in me tonight. Very much inspired. So yeah, let's just take a moment now and just take a deep breath. I don't know about you, but I feel like I've been holding my breath for a couple years now. So yeah, let's open to be inspired. Let's inspire each other. Let's share the air and consciously strive to meet this powerful archangel of spring and access the healing breath. So yeah, every spring, the Easter event is recalled. And although the mystery of Golgotha entered into the evolution of the earth as a once and for all event, it is renewed in us each year. So we can do a little spirit recalling to gather forces and gain insights through the exploration of there's just many cultural expressions connected to spring, which humanity's been creating since ancient times, revealing the manifold expressions of rebirth during this season. And I love this idea of that we need to create new traditions. So that's something that we're going to actually be doing at the Sophia Rising Convergence. So I hope you'll join us for that. But yeah, cultures around the world mark the spring equinox with various festivals and holy days. So I wanted to mention Persia, which of course is now Iran. And this festival is called Nowruz, which means new day in Farsi. And it's the start of their new year. So doesn't it kind of make sense to have the new year in the springtime? I mean, it's one of humanity's oldest festivals. And more than, I think it's like 300 million people celebrate this New Year's Day on the spring equinox every year. And that includes places all over the world that have been touched by the Persian influence, the Balkans, the Black Sea Basin, the Caucasus Mountains, Central Asia, and the Middle East. And then on the other side of the world, Japan also has a public holiday with roots in the ancient religion of Shintoism. And this is the belief that every living thing possesses a spiritual force. And this is especially honored with the advent of spring, as the trees and flowers thrive. To celebrate, folks hold family reunions, they visit shrines and graves. Yeah, they bring their ancestors in. And they give offerings to the cherry blossoms and the other natural wonders that come alive in the spring. And this is a really interesting one, that the Hindu arrival of spring holiday is really actually another very old festival, and it's celebrated today with a twist. But it was first mentioned in a poem in the 4th century. But nowadays it's a national holiday in India. So everybody's got the day off of work, and they celebrate on the day after the March full moon. So the festival will be on Saturday for us this year. And so, that makes it a movable feast. And the holiday nowadays is known for these, the brightly colored powders that are thrown into the air, covering everybody with paint, symbolizing the joyful return of the many colors of spring. I don't know if anybody's ever experienced that. It's wild. Very, very festive. And yes, our ancestors, they have given us such a legacy, and so much that we can build on and renew for the future. They had a keen awareness of the seasons, which we need to really awaken. And they built monuments to the sun and the stars, which they marked by, building these initiation sites, basically giant calendars and temples to the gods. Really aligning them to display the shafts of sunlight that come in during the equinox and solstice times. And this is a picture here of Chichen Itza, this beautiful sacred place, a complex of Mayan ruins on the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico. So it's right on the ocean. It's breathtaking. And so it's a popular place all year round, but especially during the equinoxes. And the El Castillo pyramid, which is dedicated to Quetzalcoatl. The sun creates this shadow of a snake that slowly slides down the northern staircase, and it's spectacular. Thousands of people come to witness this spectacle. So there's a real carnival atmosphere with music and dancers and other festivities. And on the Mediterranean island of Malta, there is a complex consisting of 3 temples. You see a connection to the Grail mysteries with that. And during the equinoxes, the rising sun is in exact alignment with the main doorway of the lower temple, which allows sunlight to fill the main corridor all the way into the innermost chamber to touch the altar at the end. And yeah, I'm sure most of us are familiar with Stonehenge, right? The most famous Neolithic structure in England, if not the world. And, you know, we can really remember it as this dwelling place for the Druids in the days of old. And now, well, everybody comes to watch the same awe-inspiring clockwork sunrise that our ancient ancestors witnessed thousands of years ago. But it's slightly shifted on what is left of the ruins. And then some really amazing places in Ireland. The spring equinox was celebrated here long before the arrival of the Celtic tribes. So it's very, very ancient. And the best known of these ancient temples has this, again, this really interesting 100-foot long passage that accepts the sun on the morning of both the vernal and the autumnal equinoxes. And a second, even older equinox temple also follows a sunbeam on the morning of the equinox that enters a passageway, lighting up the sacred geometry on this backstone that's deep, deep inside the temple. It's just amazing, this precise timing from a period of over 6,000 years ago still works today, although the beam has moved counterclockwise about a foot or so because of the precession of the equinoxes. So what is this precession of the equinoxes? Well, we could do a whole program on that, but just to give you an example, for instance, in ancient India, the sun rose in the sign of Cancer, the crab, at the vernal equinox. In ancient Persia, it was in the twins, Gemini. And in the time of the Mithras cult of Assyria, it was in Taurus the bull. When we did our work with the storytelling of the Holy Nights, working with the Epic of Gilgamesh, that was the energy that we were working with. So we find these astrological influences in mythology. Yeah, it's there in every epoch, reflecting the consciousness of the human being at that time. And at the time of the mystery of Golgotha, it was in the constellation of Aries, the Lamb. So yeah, during the 2,000 years or so since then, it has moved again. And the intersection marking the spring equinox is now in the constellation of Pisces. So when the sun rises on March 20th, 2022, it will be in the constellation of the Fishes. And yet, you know, just like the seasons show us, everything changes. So it is that we'll be making our way toward the age of Aquarius, right? So we can see how these alignments really reflect the changing consciousness of the human being through the ages. And yet we all kind of carry this ancient knowing, don't we? Mm. Here in Chicago, we have this thing called Chicago-henge because we have these east-west streets. And so the sun will rise and align between the buildings. And so, yeah, this knowing is living in the modern human being. And yeah, with the vernal equinox, we're at this midpoint of the waxing year. So the spark of light that was born at the winter solstice has reached its fertile phase. And from this point forward, the days grow longer than the nights. And this is the time of full dawn. So that's 6 a.m. on the world clock. And I really wanted to mention this idea of dawn because in ancient times, the vernal equinox was sacred to the twilight time of dawn. And we can watch the sunrise every morning and tune into that energy. Every culture through the various epochs has a dawn goddess associated with the element of air in the eastern sky, giving us the name of the holiday that we call Easter. So yeah, the mystery schools, they had a special initiatory rite at the first light of the spring equinox dedicated to the dawn goddess. So maybe, friends, maybe you'll decide to watch the sunrise on Sunday and tune into that energy and see what that speaks to you now. And of course, we know it's also the time of Corey's return from the underworld, where, as Persephone, she had ruled throughout the winter. She reunites now with Demeter to bring fertility back to the earth. And in the old Roman times, it was the celebration of the rebirth of the sun god, Adonis the Beautiful. And we have the Druid traditions of their rites of spring. Alba Ilir means the light of the earth. So yeah, we could talk about, the different holy days of March, and one of the milestones of the dawning of the turning point of time is a feast that we call the Annunciation. So this is marked by the fixed calendar date of March 25th. And this beloved Marian festival really commemorates the day that the Archangel Gabriel announced that the Luke Mary, the Christian form of the Virgin Sophia, was pregnant with the Son of God, born 9 months later on the 25th of December. So how's that for a nice little spring fertility symbol? And this feast of conception is also known by the more ancient name, Lady Day. And just to bring us to a close here, I just thought to mention that, yeah, just as a death in the physical world is a birth in the spiritual world, just as dawn is the time of the new light, so the vernal equinox is the time of new life. And so we will mark Rudolf Steiner's death day as a rebirth on the 30th. And this just happens to be our last full cohort meeting before our Easter break. So yes, besides the vernal equinox, March has many of these beautiful holy days, and we can tune in, we can avail ourselves to this sacred time in the cycle of the year, this time of the growing sunshine, where we can really be conscious of inspiration for healing. So my wish is that we can make this time of rebirth, this time of new beginnings, this time for a fresh start that we need, as we plant the seeds for the future, and continue our journey of transformation from the caterpillar to the butterfly. Thank you.
Thank you, Hazel, so much. I feel like I got a little bit, I'm gearing now in that direction. Like, this is that time of rebirth and renewal, and the dawn energy and that light and air. So thank you for bringing it all in such your way of just bringing all the beautiful images and cross-cultural and giving us a lot of knowledge as well. So thank you. And yeah, we're at the end of our time. What a rich back-to-back experience that all seem to flow really well together as the spiritual world helps us. Jordan, did you want to bring us home?
Yeah, no, it wasn't it? It was sweet. Yeah, we didn't have much of a sense, other than that we wanted to have these voices from the movement have a chance to speak. And that is one of these just kind of breathtaking aspects of anthroposophy, is there's just this renewal in everything that the human being does and everything the human being is becoming, we catch this little glimpse that I know is so exciting and inspiring. Not the human being did that, and oh my gosh, the human being is going to do that. Wow, it's just such an exciting team to be a part of. So thank you all for being here.
Yes, and I think someone probably saved the chat with all of our.
Yeah, I did. I saved it with our poem. So we'll take the poems and we'll put that in the Padlet. And as I said before, if you haven't been on the Padlet in a while, there's a lot of information from all of our seed series, all of our Wednesday nights that are there. And this one especially, I think, is worth visiting because we do have these great links to all this exciting stuff that's going on. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Yeah. Thank you.